Mitchell, a three is good. Off the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pacers Fever Show, your home for everything professional hoops in the state of Indiana. I'm your host, Logan, and today we will be discussing the 1-1 start for your Indiana Fever. The Fever smashed the Chicago Sky in their season opener, but lose their first game of the season in a heartbreaker to the Atlanta Dream on Tuesday night. We'll break it all down, what went right, what went wrong, the in-game adjustments that we saw, and the ones that still need to be made. We'll also preview Thursday's rematch against that Dream team as the Fever look for redemption in Atlanta and continue building momentum. Early in the season, stick around. It's the Pacers Fever Show, and it starts right now. This is a podcast that covers the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. We are currently covering the Pacers and their Eastern Conference Finals run. They start tonight against the New York Knicks, and the Indiana Fever will play again tomorrow, Thursday, on May 22nd. I think they said that the Pacers and Fever for 8 to 9 straight nights play. So it goes Pacers Fever, Pacers Fever. You have the Indianapolis 500. The city is abuzz. There are plenty of things to do right now in the city of Indianapolis. And what an exciting time. You've got two of the best point guards in their respective leagues, and Caitlin Clark and Tyrese Halliburton. The things that they can do are extraordinary. They're setting records all the time. We're going to talk about Caitlin Clark's records that she's been setting over the last couple of games. DeWanna Bonner also collects a couple of milestones and sets a record as well. So we will be discussing that. And that was in that Chicago Sky game. And that's where I want to start. I want to talk about the opener because we have not recorded since the opener with scheduling issues that I've had in traveling back and forth between Cincinnati and Orlando. I've not had the chance to record, but again, I'm on the outside looking in as, you know, my family. For those of you that are just joining me for the first time, if you're listening to my first Fever recap, I'm from Indianapolis originally. The family still lives around there. Grew up a Pacers and Fever fan. So it's been an exciting time as these teams have become very good once again. They've both had their successes in years prior. But I'm really excited to cover both of these teams starting this year. And again, we've done that with the Indiana Pacers in their 2025 playoff run. We'll be covering the Fever all season long throughout the postseason as well. And into the offseason, we'll do some different episodes where we'll talk about different things, maybe some power ranking episodes and things like that as we catch up on the weekly action that's happening in the WNBA as well as the NBA and the off seasons for both of the leagues. But I'm looking forward to covering these Fever and the Indiana Pacers over the next couple of years. And I hope you join along. And by that, I am extending an invite for anybody that would like to join this show as a co-host, because I'm always looking for somebody to join. That way I have a little bit of a break, because it can be difficult to talk for an hour straight. And I could use a little bit of break to gather my thoughts, as sometimes you'll hear me slip up between the Fever and the Pacers. It happens quite a bit. In fact, I've been covering a lot of the Pacers, obviously, and have been calling Caitlin Cooper, who's one of the writers that covers the Indiana Pacers. I've been calling her Caitlin Clark, Caitlin Cooper. So it's just been a lot of confusion with both of the teams playing simultaneously. But we'd rather have it that way than not, because that means that the Pacers are doing well and that the Fever are back to starting the WNBA season. So here we go. Game 1, Chicago Sky. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark. It got physical, and the Fever smash the Chicago Sky 93-58 with 20 points dropped by Caitlin Clark, a triple-double by the point guard, and she had her first triple-double of the WNBA season, finishing with 20, 10, and 10. Clark is now tied with Candace Parker for the third most in WNBA history with 3. So she is quickly going up the rankings. She's starting to set records. She's passed, I think, Vandersloot, who is on the Chicago Sky. She passed her yesterday, I believe it was. I think it was the amount of threes. We'll get to it, but I think it's the amount of maybe double doubles that she had or something like that, or 20 points, 10 assists. We'll get into it. I have the record somewhere. I can't find it right off of the top of my head, but it just came up because we were talking about all the historic things that Caitlin Clark has done over her stretch in the WNBA after her rookie year. She's now played a rookie year and 2 games and has either set WNBA records as the all-time leader, which is crazy to think that a second-year player could do that, but also has climbed into the top 10 in many of these categories for setting records. Caitlin Clark will own most of the WNBA records by the end of her career, which will be incredible. I mean, just the fact that she's able to do what she does at such a high level and raises the bar of competitive basketball in the WNBA, it's only going to get better from here. She is just the start of it, which has to be really exciting if you're a WNBA fan, because the talent in the league is continually getting better. You see with all these WNBA drafts, the talent pool is getting deeper and deeper. And the more that this game is appreciated, the better that this league is going to be. And Caitlin Clark will be the very first person, I think, that will set too many records. So it will be Caitlin Clark at the top of all these records. You've had some really great WNBA players, of course, throughout the history of this league, but Caitlin Clark is flying by all of them and waving as she's going by. So very exciting if you're an Indiana Fever fan, because the next decade to 15 years is going to be thrilling with Caitlin Clark at the helm for this Fever offense. But let's go over some of the notes from that Chicago Sky game. So I'm actually reading this off of, they do a really nice job on the Fever website of giving you Indiana Fever notes at the bottom of the recaps. It gives you like records that have been set or big time things that have happened that are milestones or noteworthy at the bottom. So I'm going to read through all of these. And this is from, again, the Fever WNBA.com website. Caitlin Clark scored the first points of the 2025 Indiana Fever season, making 2 free throws in the opening minute. With 3:13 left in the game, DeWanna Bonner scored her 7th point of the night, officially making her the 3rd highest scorer in WNBA history, surpassing Tina Thompson. Bonner finished the night with 7 points, giving her 7,489 all-time points scored across her career. Aaliyah Boston recorded her first double-double of the season, finishing the night with 19 points and 13 boards. Caitlin Clark records her first triple-double of the season, 20, 10, and 10. Clark, again, tied for 3rd most with Candace Parker with 3 triple-doubles. Clark also made 4 blocks, more than any single game in her college and professional career, good for the most in a single game by any point guard in the WNBA history. Rookie Michaela Thompson recorded her first professional points via free throws in the 4th quarter, finishing the night with 4 points total. The 35-point margin of victory is tied for the 2nd largest in team history, matching a 98-63 win over the Los Angeles Sparks on July 31st, 2011. The Fever recorded 37 defensive rebounds, tied for the 3rd most in team history, last occurring on July 11th, 2021. It was a really big night to open the season. Caitlin Clark and that rivalry with Angel Reese, 2 of the same stars that have come from the same draft class, is what I was going for there. Angel Reese had 12 points. She had 17 rebounds. She is an absolute monster on the glass, and she imposes her will physically down in the paint. She's working a lot on that jump shot too. I saw some video of the Chicago Sky, that somebody from the Chicago Sky, I think beat writing or on the beat, recorded a video of her taking some 3-point corner shots at Chicago Sky practices over the last week. So she's working on that shot. She doesn't typically shoot a ton from the outside. She was 1 of 2 in this game. She shot 5 of 14 from the field. But again, they're trying to get her offensive game to become more than what it is, because then she becomes an absolute dominant threat on the offensive end as well as the defensive end, especially on the glass. She had 7 offensive rebounds, 10 defensive rebounds, and she and Caitlin Clark went mano-a-mano in this game. And by that, I meant like literally Caitlin Clark, I think it was maybe the third quarter. I can't remember exactly when it happened, but because it was 2 games ago. But she goes up for, or Angel Reese goes up for a shot, and Caitlin Clark, as Angel Reese is going up with the basketball, she kind of like cross or rakes across her arms and like hits her arms, but like with good force. It was a good foul. It was nothing malicious. But again, the Angel Reese did not like it. She took offense to Caitlin Clark doing that. She was not thrilled, and she starts to go in the direction of Caitlin Clark. Tempers flare. She's talking across the court as Clark runs away from, not runs away, but quickly walks away towards her side of the bench. They go into review, flagrant ones assessed, technicals to Reese, and Boston. So Angel Reese and Aaliyah both get technicals after the play, as Boston steps in to try to mitigate what was going on. But Angel Reese was just so hot headed that she was going to go through whoever she needed to go through to get to Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark walks away. They get into it. It was a physical play. I guess I agree somewhat with the flagrant one. It obviously, I don't think she was going for the basketball. I do think she was just trying to make contact so that Angel Reese couldn't get the ball up for a shot. With that, with the way that the rules are explained, I think they had to assess the flagrant one. But again, very chippy, have been very chippy against one another. Caitlin Clark has always done really well against Angel Reese and her team. And I just feel like this was a rivalry. I don't know. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a rivalry just because the Sky are not that great, but the Fever, they were fired up in this game, and this was in the third quarter. I remember now, but yeah, it jarred the ball loose. Tempers flare. They grab Angel, take her over towards the bench. You can see she's mouthing something at Caitlin. Caitlin's kind of chirping at Angel as she's walking away. It's a good rivalry. I mean, it'll be a long-standing one as long as those two are in the league together. And I think you'll have that intensity every time that the Fever and the Sky play against one another. The Sky are just not on the Fever level right now. The Fever are a ascending team. The Sky are stuck in the mud, and they're looking to get some of the pieces out that don't necessarily fit with this team, but also I think in a time of transition and trying to figure out what their identity is going to be. And Angel Reese has got to improve her offensive game if she's going to be a top talent in this league. She's a great talent defensively and on the boards, but what can she do to elevate her game offensively? And I think that's the question mark, where Caitlin Clark, really, she's got the offensive game that's going to translate obviously in this league. Her way to distribute the basketball, but also her ability to rebound is something of note. I mean, this is a tremendous attribute for a guard, especially a point guard, to be able to rebound at the rate Caitlin Clark does. So Caitlin, an all around phenom, superstar in the making, if not already there, breaking records in her second year. Angel Reese, a good young developing talent, and totally different playing fields right now. So again, very chirpy, very chippy, but you got to love that. You love the intensity of Caitlin Clark. The Fever, kind of embodying what it is Indiana basketball, has just become this identity of tough teams, with the Pacers and the Fever being very tough physically. I think they could even step it up more, the Fever, because I feel like there were some instances in the second game where the physicality was in favor of Atlanta, where in this game, Indiana just imposed their will on the Chicago Dream, and the Dream, or sorry, the Chicago Sky. Now I'm getting teams crossed. The Chicago Sky just couldn't keep up with the high octane offense that was Indiana in this game. So you look at the percentages, the Chicago Sky shoot 29.1%. You're not going to win any games or come even close to beating teams shooting 30% from the field. The Fever shoot 46.7%. The Sky were 6 of 27 from three for 22%. The Fever 7 of 21 with 33%. Free throw sorry. Free throw percentage. The Sky shoot 12 and only hit 6 for 50%. at 64%, and they were 16 of 25, which will come into play in that in this next game, and we'll talk about their free throw percentage because as a team they are not shooting well collectively as a team, and it cost them in game two. Rebounds 42 to 46, the Fever in favor there. Assist 17 to 19, Fever in favor once again. Steals 13 steals from the Indiana. 7 blocks for the Chicago Sky. Total turnovers 19 for Chicago and 11 for the Fever. Fast break points 11 for the Sky and 16 for the Fever. Points in the paint 48 for the Fever and 26 for the Chicago Sky. And the largest lead, obviously 35 points for the Fever. And the Sky actually did lead at some point in this game by 2. So it was a close game for a couple of minutes there. In the first quarter, there was only a 5-point lead, and then the lead just kept growing and growing. And by the end of the third quarter, the Fever had a very comfortable lead, not letting the Sky score above 20 in any of the quarters, which was great defensively. The Fever really attacked well. Point of attack, stopping the ball in transition, not really letting the Sky get out and do anything. Offensive rebounds weren't really killing them as much as it would against the Dream, but I felt like the Fever played a really good game. Got teammates involved, where you got some of the players off the bench that not necessarily get minutes, and you're talking about just an onslaught on the offensive end. So a really good game by the Fever. Just kind of going over the box score. Caitlin Clark again, 20, 10, and 10. DeWanna Bonner had 7 points. Natasha Howard, 15 points. Aaliyah Boston, 19 points with 13 boards. You had Kelsey Mitchell with 15 points in this game. She was 2 of 4 from the 3-point line. Caitlin Clark was 50% from the 3-point line. She shot 6 of 13. And then you had Dantas with 2 points. Timpson with 4. You had Sydney Colson with 2. Lexi Hull had 9 points. Lexi Hull also had 9 boards. She's a really good rebounder. Very physical, very high energy, constantly moving defensively, constantly moving on the offensive end too. She's somebody you got to worry about grabbing offensive boards. She had 3. She was second on the team in offensive boards behind Aaliyah Boston. But Lexi just has this nose for the basketball. When it goes up, she's going to go after it. She was tremendous in this game as far as just the effort. She didn't shoot it as well. She was 0 for 4 from 3, 4 of 10 from the field, but and similar struggles somewhat in the second game. She did rebound well in that game as well. I felt like her intensity matched that of the Dream, but we'll get there into that game shortly. But again, I thought it was a good game from the Fever, a great opening statement win, and you saw some of the new additions making an impact. Natasha Howard having 15 points. She had 3 steals. She had a block. She felt it felt good having her in the starting lineup. DeWanna Bonner struggled in the starting lineup, and we'll talk about what maybe the future holds for Bonner or the Fever, and as Sophie Cunningham gets healthy, because she missed game 1 and game 2 with the right ankle injury. But overall, again, like I said, game 1 was just a total blowout, and the Fever took advantage of a weaker Sky team, and you could tell they just really struggled to keep up with the Fever's talent in this first game. Now, switching over to game 2 and looking at the final score, Atlanta Dream at 92, Indiana Fever 91. The Dream coming off a 94-90 loss to the Washington Mystics on May 16th. This game was a lot different in the way that Indiana defended. I felt like Indiana did a really nice job against the Sky, not letting them get anything offensively or in rhythm, and just causing all sorts of problems defensively with their length, with their ability to get physical with the Sky. I felt like Atlanta did what the Fever did to the Sky, but just not to that extent where, you're blowing out Chicago. Atlanta didn't blow out Indiana, but I felt for 39 minutes Atlanta was the much better team in this game. The Fever made some nice runs, and every run was matched by an Atlanta Dream 5-0, 6-0, 8-0 run, and they were right back to where they had started with about a 10 to 12 point lead and got very comfortable in that range, 8 to 10 to 12. Like it stayed pretty consistent throughout the game. There was only a couple times at the end of the second half where the Fever get back within 4, and then a 9-0 run coming out of half by um, Ryan Ryan Howard, sorry, 9-0 run by herself, and that ultimately pushes their lead back up. But we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the game summary and talk about some of the highlights here. But I did want to just say that Atlanta imposed their will. They were more physical. They were the better team on Tuesday night. They had the more experience. You could tell it was a more experienced team than what the Fever had. Brittany Griner is going to be a really nice addition for this Atlanta team. And, with the way that the Fever played them and going into the matchup Thursday, there are some concerns that I have with the Fever. And I think some of the weaknesses, and even Stephanie White alluded to the fact that tonight you saw what the story will be for the Fever for the rest of the season. Like she was pretty adamant about saying, these are the problems that we're going to have this season, and these are things that we're going to have to grow and learn from losses like this. And I will say I think it was encompassing of like what the Fever are really going to struggle with, like this game, all encompassing of what they're going to struggle with this season. And it was on display. So let's talk about it. First half highlights. Last 3 minutes in the first, the Dream go on a 14-7 run to lead 31-23 at the end of the first quarter. After Kelsey Mitchell sunk a driving lane up 5 seconds into the game, Indiana found themselves outshot in the paint throughout the remainder of the first quarter and really struggled throughout the game, handling the interior as far as defending it. The Fever end up with the advantage with points in the paint, but I felt the physicality and the presence of Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones caused the Fever a ton of issues, and I think it allowed for the Dream to open up those outside shots for Ryan Howard, and it became extremely difficult to match up with the Dream because of just the size advantage that Brittany Griner has, the ability to finish around the rim that Brianna has. I mean, they were they were so good in this game. Like it was so much fun to watch them from the opposite side. Like I really did enjoy Brittany Griner and watching her play, just because I think she's somebody that you just take for granted at times, I think. And Atlanta fans are going to be thrilled that she has now made her home with the Dream. So I was really impressed with the way that this team looked. I thought that they were the ones that set the pace and the tone early on. And from that first quarter on, it just felt like a uphill climb the rest of the game for the Fever, even when they would get back into this game, even when Caitlin Clark would go on to score 11 points in the second quarter, pulling Indiana within 2, of halftime break. I said 4. They pull within 2. I felt like the momentum was shifting. And then right out of the halftime, the Dream made adjustments. I think the Fever went away from that game plan where actually you kind of noticed it too, where they were pressuring the ball in that second quarter and then dropping into a zone and kind of a matchup zone where they were matching up with their man. And I felt like there were so many times where the Fever were able to stop a good possession by the Dream because of the zone that they were in and slow that pace down. And then in the third quarter, they kind of go away from that pressure and that intensity. And I felt that's what swung back the Dream's way. And then from that third quarter on, again, like I said, the Fever had to make a charge at him again, and then I think just ran out of punches and ultimately lose the game. But that first half, I felt like there was momentum enough there, but for some reason the girls come out of the locker room and they just lose it. And I don't know if it was adjustments that were made with Stephanie White. It was a lot of the Dream making adjustments, getting more involvement from Griner, at the elbow, and getting the ball intentionally to her in the paint, and then letting her destroy defenses, because the Fever were at the end of the game having to double her quite often to try to get the ball out of her hands. So they were doubling on that weak side of that zone, and then Griner was just finding open players. I mean, it was cuts to the basket, really good passing from Griner, just court awareness, even drawing a second defender and then swinging it back out. And then you had open shots. I felt like the Dream had a lot of open shots just because of the success that Griner and Brown and Jones were having. So I think those are adjustments you make. I don't think there's anything too concerning there, except for the fact that I do think at times the Fever are going to struggle with taller players like that, with a more physical player in the post. Aaliyah Boston's good, but I'm afraid that the length of some of these other players like a Griner are going to cause her issues defensively, and she's okay defensively. I thought she played pretty well, but I mean, Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner had, I just combined the two players. They had their way in the post, and DeWanna Bonner wasn't really doing anything to stop it. Natasha Howard ended up with Brianna Jones. She ended up sometimes on Griner, just depending on the switches and the double teams. And I just felt like the Fever didn't have an answer. They could have kept going to Brittany Griner, and it was gonna basically eliminate whatever the Fever were trying to do defensively. So, like I said, Dream come out on an 11-0 run in the first 2 minutes of the third, get 9 points in that stretch from Ryan Howard, and from that point on, they go up 11. I think their biggest lead was 14 at one point. I think that was around the third quarter, and um, it was tough, like, for the Fever to get back into this. Caitlin Clark gets on a hot streak where she is scoring at will, hitting 2 huge 3-pointers. I don't know how she got them off. Like, when she shoots shots sometimes, the amount of contest on these shots, I'm like, how did she even get the ball off? Like, how did the defender not hit the ball? Like, how do they not deflect it or block it? Because it just looks so improbable, the positions in which she shoots from sometimes. She comes off those picks so quick, and her release is just so quick. It's like a jab. You don't even realize she's shooting it sometimes until it's going through the air. It's amazing to me. She hit a couple logo shots. There's actually a really good commercial out with her right now that's State Farm. I think it's a shoot from the logo, State Farm commercial. So if you want to YouTube it, but yeah, Atlanta 3 5-pointers. Wow, that's a lot. 5 3-pointers made in the third quarter, put the Dream up by 11. But the Fever were quick to respond at the start of the fourth quarter, with Caitlin Clark and Lexi Hull combining for 9 points off of 3-pointers to pull Indiana within 4. Indiana took its second lead of the game with 21 seconds remaining, but a foul on the other end. Ryan Howard sinks 2 free throws to retake the lead, and despite a buzzer beater attempt, Natasha Howard ends up missing that, clanking it off the back of the rim, and Atlanta secures the victory in Indiana. A really, really tough game to drop, just because you had chances there at the end of the game. The Fever put together a 10-0 run, got you back in, got you a 1-point lead. It's that Aaliyah Boston trip to the free throw line where she misses both. And it takes the win out of your sails, as Ryan Howard's able to draw a foul on the other end, hits her free throws. And the Fever just let too many opportunities slip out of their hands in this game, and we'll talk about it here. The free throw percentage, not good once again. So, like I said, in the last game, they shot about 60%. In this game, they shoot 61.5% from the free throw line. They were 16 of 26, compared to the Atlanta Dream, who hit 25 of 32 from the free throw stripe. So that's a huge advantage. I mean, you're getting beat on the free throw line by 9 points. You have a chance to at least cut that in half if you just shoot at a normal percentage around that 75 to 80% the Fever can shoot at. A lot of points left on the free throw line, and ultimately you lose by 1 point, and that's something you can look at and say that's where we lost the game. Not being able to convert our free throws, and really going through different lulls on offense, and we can talk about that here, because in my rundown on YouTube, the next thing that it says is what went right. So let's go with what's right and then what's wrong. Positive first. Um, Caitlin Clark is what went right. Caitlin Clark was amazing in this game. I mean, MVP level type play. She had 27 points, 11 assists, 5 boards, and I thought she was really good as the game started to get tight. She did have a turnover where was pretty uncharacteristic of her. Um, she's done a couple things too defensively that I'd kind of critique. There are times when they're dribbling at her, and because she's not the best defender, she kind of lets them go by, and as they're going by, she tries to do that thing where you reach around to try to smack the ball away from them as they're going by you. But I think she did it twice that I saw right at half court, lost her person, and that player went on to create offense on the other end. And so just I wouldn't say lazy defense, but just not aware of the fact that she just needed to get in front of her person, guard that man, and then um, ultimately stop any kind of transition that was happening. But she only did a couple of times that I noticed. She did have a turnover that was very uncharacteristic of her. Um, but I think looking at the overall game, while she could have been better, I think she was still very effective. She was 9 of 20 from the field, which isn't like um, extraordinary. She shot 45%, but still very good. Uh, Shot 4 of 6 from the free throw line, but overall just had a complete impact on this game. And from start to finish, I thought was the better player, um, probably on the floor. I mean, Brittany Griner was really good in this game. So was Ryan Howard, um, as far as late in the game, and then Brianna Jones, because Ryan Howard started pretty slow, but finally got it going in that second half, and she was the big difference. She had 9 of those 20 points within the first 2 minutes of the second half. So I thought Caitlin was the best player on the court last night. I thought you could have made a case that Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell both were excellent in this game, 24 points each. Aaliyah Boston, 10 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell was 2 of 3 from the 3-point line and hit all of her free throws. So outside of those three, though, that's where it goes wrong. And this is something that we can talk about heading into this next bullet point and the ones to follow. The Fever lost this game, and I won't put all of it on the people outside of the three that I'm getting ready to name, but I would say a majority of it can kind of rest on their shoulders some. Aaliyah Boston was 9 of 13, 6 of 7 from the free throw line. She had 24 points, 2 blocks, 4 assists, 10 boards. Kelsey Mitchell, 9 of 15, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, 2 assists, and she had 24 points. Caitlin Clark, like I said, 9 of 20, 5 of 11 from 3, 4 of 6 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals, and just 3 turnovers with 27 points. Combined, what is that? That's 75 points. The rest of the Fever had 15 points. And that's just not that's just not sustainable to be a really good team in this league. You've got to have more production from DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, Brianna Turner, Cindy Colson, even Lexi Hull to an extent. I think offensively, I mean, 6 isn't horrible, and Lexi was a plus 24, or sorry, plus 14, not plus 24. She had the best plus minus on the team last night, but it was just her ability to get active in this game. I mean, Lexi Hull was getting to the rebounds. She was creating things offensively. she's what ultimately sparks that second half run that she and the other three from the starting lineup, Boston, Mitchell, and Clark. I mean, I felt like that was an effective unit together. And Lexi Hull makes an argument, as well as when Sophie Cunningham comes back, that maybe there's an adjustment to that starting lineup eventually. But I think what went wrong essentially is you didn't hit your free throws, right? Um, you would like to limit the amount of turnovers. They had 19, or sorry, 14 to Atlanta's 11. I was reading the personal fouls. They did get into some foul trouble, the Fever, but not too bad against somebody like Griner. But again, I think that's one. Those are a couple things that went wrong. The rebounding, where it was, a 5 rebound margin. The Dream had 5 more rebounds, but I felt like their opportunities come off of offensive boards, not boxing out at opportune times. Um, there wasn't a huge margin of error on, the points scored off a second chance. Atlanta had 18, the Fever had 15, but I mean that's a difference right there, right? That's 3 points, and the Fever lose by 1. So offensive boards did have an impact, but I just felt like even the offensive boards that they got, so they had 12. The Dream did compared to Indiana's 8. I just felt like it when you get offensive boards, you're extending possessions, and even though they're not necessarily converted all the time, those possessions, it still wears the defense down. It's still demoralizing. Or when you're trying to make runs at teams, even if they're not scoring and you're trying to get points on the board, but they're getting offensive rebounds and extending possessions, that it's shortening the game. So again, I felt like Atlanta just had their will. They were much stronger, much more intense than Indiana, where I felt like there was just moments where Indiana was just going through the motions. And you can. This is what else went wrong. So there were a lot of times where Caitlin Clark, working off a pick from Boston or Bonner and Howard at times, like she would come off these picks and great, right? She gets open. She's able to move to that next action. But that next action often involved her either driving to the basket, not getting really any open looks from the outside as she's driving. So she's not able to kick it out to somebody. But the actions around were just so stagnant too. I mean, there would often be times where they'd make that first pass or they'd go off that first screen. There'd be a roll. That roll didn't get open, or that pick and pop didn't get open, that fade. And then the offense just kind of stymied and it became ISO ball with either Caitlin or Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston at times. Like it just became a lot of dribbling. And I felt like the Fever were much more impactful in this game when they were able to move the basketball, get Caitlin moving in actions, screening and rolling, getting Aaliyah Boston open, going towards the rim, getting that mismatch, or getting Caitlin on a mismatch and letting her tear down the defense and penetrate through the paint, get those shooters open. But there was just so many times where after that first action, they just kind of stood around and dribbled and didn't really know where to go next, didn't really move the basketball. Whereas I feel like this team's got really good passing, high IQ basketball players. It just became frozen at times. So again, that was a big difference in the game. There were multiple instances where this happened in the first and third quarters where you're just going, gosh, create something like besides off the dribble. I mean, it was just a stagnant offense, and they could have been so much better moving the basketball, but didn't. So that's one thing that I felt was wrong. And then the last thing I want to mention is just the physicality and the size is going to be an issue, I think, for the Fever, because DeWanna Bonner, decorated, a legend in this game, one of the best to ever do it, but she is getting on the older side, right? She's not really in her prime anymore. She's not as fast or quick as she'd once been, and you could tell that the matchup was just too much for her yesterday. Like really tell, because Griner just ate it alive, and Brianna Jones, ate her alive, and she just really struggled defensively, offensively. Doesn't add a whole bunch of pace to your offense. Is a good passer, can hit and knock down shots, but when she's not doing that, when she's 2 for 9, it's really hard to justify having her out there. So I don't know. She was over 1 yesterday. Sorry, 2 for 9 in that first game. That's what I meant to say. She played 16 minutes. She just looked out of sorts. She rebounds the basketball, but I mean, she's a bigger person, so of course she's going to. But I just felt like the game was just too fast for her yesterday. So I don't know what that means going forward for the Fever, except for the fact that they're going to have to look at possibly switching up the lineups and the rotations. I'll be interested to see if she becomes a good bench option, which would be fine. Having that experience off the bench and having that size off the bench is no issue. It's finding a replacement for her. Do you put Lexi Hull in and Sophie Cunningham and go with a little bit of a smaller lineup? Do you possibly put Brianna Turner in, who's a very good defensive player? Offensive game could be better, but I think if you're looking at replacements for DeWanna Bonner, like where do you go? And Brianna Turner might be, you know, somebody you consider, but I mean, her offensive game is just so limited. So do you go with Sophie Cunningham, who started for the Mercury? Do you go with Lexi Hull, who gave you some starts last year? Like, where do you turn, right? And bringing in the idea of bringing Bonner in was adding more size to that starting lineup beside Aaliyah Boston. So then, do you move Natasha Howard to more of a 4? And she had a hard time. She guarded Brianna Jones yesterday and really struggled just because of the size difference. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing to watch as the season goes on. And who knows, right? DeWanna Bonner, its first 2 games, getting started, getting the engine started might be a little bit more difficult as she gets older, but she's done it at a high level for so long. So maybe just a couple of tough games, she starts to get the hang of being with the Fever and what that looks like. And I think Stephanie White wants to move to a higher pace. She likes that high pace, high pressure, get in their face, maybe drop back into that zone, really cause teams to try to speed up that game, because I think that's the pace that the Fever want to play in. It is a much higher pace than what they played in against the Dream at times yesterday. So does DeWanna Bonner fit that? I don't know. But over the last 2 games, it hasn't looked like it. And towards the end of the game yesterday, Stephanie White removed her from the game and put Lexi Hull in that spot. So we'll see what Stephanie does. And she's got that relationship with DeWanna because they've come from the same team. She's coached her. So I think there's that relationship and I think DeWanna Bonner came to Indiana to win. I don't think she necessarily cares too much what her role is at this point in her career because of how well she's done it for so long and how long she's done it for so long. She just wants to win basketball games. And I think she's somebody that you can move out of that lineup, because I think Natasha Howard is fine. Like, I think she'll be fine in that role, in that number, in that forward spot, guarding their second big. I think she can do it. There's going to be some mismatches obviously in the league, but I think that you give that a shot, because let me just go through what the plus minuses were for these lineups. So their best plus minus lineup, the Fever, over the last 2 games in this lineup has played 12.3 minutes per game of the last 2 and have scored 35.5 when on the court together in those 12 minutes per game. They shoot 54%, 66 from 3. They rebound pretty well at 14.5. Their assists are really good, 7.5 in that stretch too. Plus 15, and that is Natasha Howard, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and Caitlin Clark, which was that lineup that ended that game against the Dream and featured some against that Chicago team. And that's a really good lineup. Lexi Hull provides rebounding, so you're not missing any rebounding there. The size defensively might be the issue there, obviously, but I mean, as far as a unit together, that's a really strong unit and great production in the first 2 games. So I think you're gonna see that lineup a ton. And then you add in the ability to put, Sophie Cunningham in, who could spell Howard or Hull, even Mitchell at times. So I think you could see a lineup where, Dewana Bonner is not necessarily featured at the end of games. Because if you look at that starting lineup that the Fever have run out there in the last 2 games with Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Caitlin Clark, in 10 minutes together, they're averaging 20 points per game, 7 of 17 for 42.9% field goal percentage, 25% from 3, rebounds 8. So again, it's not like you're missing a ton. I think you're actually a better rebounding team when Lexi Hull's on the floor because she just knows how to rebound. But they're plus minus, they're a negative 3.5. So again, I just wonder. You know what? I want to check one more thing. I want to check because this is the traditional stats. Let's see if I can pull up their advanced stats because I want to see if I can pull up this lineup's pace. So I'm just interested to see what kind of pace they're playing with when Bonner and sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, there we go. I'm trying to see if when Bonner's out there versus Hull, what that pace looks like. Pace per 40. There you go. Pace per 40. The bad thing is a lot of the Chicago Sky stats they make they really mess with the stats because they crushed them. Let's see. Okay. So Natasha Howard, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Leah Boston, Caitlin Clark played a pace of 110.39. And then 40, pace over 40. So that'd be like what would be their pace on 40 minutes? 91.99. And that's really high. that's that's a good offensive rating. Whereas you looking at, let's see, Howard, where's the Bonner one? There it is. The pace with Bonner, 83.17. So yeah, they're quite a bit slower. But I mean, you look at it, and that's the tough part is you're going to give this lineup with Dewana Bonner 10 games probably, I'd imagine, unless they're just not performing very well. And then I think you make the adjustments. Or, maybe Stephanie White does look at Sophie Cunningham and says that's who's starting, and you keep Lexi Hull. And that actually might work pretty well, depending on how Sophie plays with Caitlin versus Sophie or versus Caitlin and Lexi. Maybe you see a split time between Cunningham and Hull and keep Hull on the bench because she's a great bench option because of her energy. But Sophie Cunningham, very similar. Great energy off the bench. If she comes off the bench, can provide good starting minutes, can score, can knock down shots, just like Lexi. So I think you got 2 really good options in Cunningham and Hull. I think both of them can give you starts. So I think it's just a matter of what does the bench unit look like? Because then you're going to have Bonner come in off the bench. And I think that works pretty well because Bonner is going to get out there, and usually the bench isn't as quick pace as your starting unit. You can play more of the half court game where Bonner is more successful, I believe. So we'll see. Because 16 minutes for Dewana Bonner, who only had 1 foul, was a minus 19, was easily the worst player on the court in her minutes played yesterday. But she might respond. Who knows? I just worry that's a really big difference between the lineups and how they've played. So a tough loss, a game that they'll grow from. But let's talk about one last thing before we kind of launch into looking ahead and looking at the rest of the league. Takeaways, we just kind of gone through that. Got to be more physical. Um, there's a lot there where I think we can be better physically, um, defensively, offensive boards, crashing the glass. Do you go more zone? Do you keep that pressure, that full court pressure, and drop into that zone against an Atlanta team or against teams that are a little bit bigger than the Fever? It helps you to be able to match up a little bit better in some of those mismatches that, because Griner and Jones are just they're beasts down low. I don't know if there's a whole lot of teams around the league that are going to have that similar kind of punch with those two, at least as far as size is concerned, where you're really going to struggle with both of them. But I think those are some takeaways. You got to get Sophie Cunningham back too. I think that this bench has just been really bad. The bench scoring is 10th in the league, average just 13 points per game, shooting 37% from the field, 14.3 from three, and 55% from the free throw line. They're just not adding much besides Lexi Hull. Turner, Brianna Turner, Colson. I mean, they've got to be better. They got to provide something. I mean, Brianna Turner is going to provide more defense than offense, but I think Colson can do more offensively. I think having Cunningham back, you extend that bench to more of 9 players that can really provide. So they've got to get more off that bench because it's just been really bad over the first couple of games. But I think Sophie fixed some of that. So we'll see what happens when Sophie returns. But yeah, some press conference quotes, because I did want to read some of what Stephanie White said, because I think it's pretty telling on the MO for the Fever and how teams are going to think about them. So she said, "We didn't handle their physicality. That's going to be our MO against us all season. Teams are going to be physical. That's how I'd play us. They're going to push us. They're going to shove us. They're going to get bold with us. They're going to do whatever they can and whatever they're allowed to get away with. And we have to figure out how we can match that physicality," which I agree. They're going to be headhunting Caitlin Clark. Like, that's just how it's been ever since she's gotten in the league. I think players got to match that. And I think that's why you bring in somebody like DeWanna Bonner, who can be more physical. You bring in Brianna Turner, who can be more physical. You've got Sydney Colson, who will get feisty. Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, like those are physical players. Leah Boston's a very physical person. So I feel like they've surrounded her with more physicality than they had last year. And they're not going to let teams hunt Caitlin like they did last year. So I think it's a big thing. But right there, that's going to be the story of the season already in game 2. Stephanie White is saying that can be concerning if the Fever don't match physicality. So we'll see if they make that adjustment. Are they going to be able to adjust to that physicality? Can they play just as physical as these other teams? Caitlin Clark said, "We wanted to win this game, but this is great for our team. A little adversity. How are we going to respond? I have to give my team a lot of credit. We never gave up. We found a way to get back in it." That I will say. Even in a game I didn't think they played very well, they were right in it at the end. Mitchell, today we failed miserably as a group because there were some certain things that we set in stone for us to be effective from quarter 1 to quarter 4. And you guys didn't see what it was supposed to look like until quarter 3.5. So that physicality, that intensity on the defensive end, the ability to box out, keep it somewhat even on the boards. That's what she's talking about. That was the difference. And the offense looked so much better in the fourth quarter. But again, I think a lot of that had to do with Lexi Hull being out there. It's just a different kind of pace that they were playing with, different kind of intensity. And Lexi brings that on a nightly basis. And then she went on to say, "So it kind of just lies in the discipline right now. Awareness, knowing personnel, certain stuff we have to come home, or we have to hone in to be successful. Our lulls were too low. That can't be that low. They can't be that low. We don't have that margin for error." And that's the one thing too, is there's so many great teams in this league with really great players, and the Fever are trying to become a great team in this league. They're not there yet. So their margin of error is not large. And I think Atlanta, a pretty good team, probably better as far as because of the experience and Griner being added. And I felt like they were deeper. I felt like In this game, they were more physical. So right now I'd put them up as a better team than Indiana because Indiana's still trying to find its identity. And I think that's going to be the story of the season is what is this team, right? What can the Fever be? And I think that's what we're trying to figure out. On the defensive end, a lot. Offensively, I think you're starting to see what that becomes. A lot of pick and roll between Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin, a lot of high pace, good passing, getting Caitlin into open space to be able to drive and penetrate the paint and then kick out to Mitchell or Hull. I think you see a lot of that. Aaliyah Boston's a dominant big person in this league. Do you call them big women? I like that sounds wrong. Like you don't say big man because that's not right. What's the terminology do we use? She's a big player. Like she's great, and by that I mean like her size. She's just a physical force. So I don't know. Somebody help me out. What's the how do we speak? Like it's man to man. It's not really. It's woman to woman. So I don't know. My vocab vernacular. So let me know. how do I say this? Player to player, man to man, women to women. You don't want to call them big girl, right? So um yeah, I just think the Fever have a lot of areas that they need to improve. I think you got to get much better in a lot of areas. So a lot of growth to happen. Next game is against the Atlanta Dream at State Farm Arena. That's going to be tomorrow, May 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday's game will be available on Prime Video nationally and locally on WTHR. So it is local for those that are watching in Indianapolis. They also have that Fever app that you can watch if you're local in the Indianapolis area for some of those games that are not nationally televised. It's funny whenever they say Prime Video nationally because I get that that's nationally because everybody in the country owns Prime somewhat, but like it's no longer national TV because it's not on like a local channel. It's very strange. But anyway, you can watch the Fever on Prime Video. You can watch the Fever pretty much on every Fever game this season is pretty much going to be accessible to most because of their national games that they play. Keys to the game on Thursday. So playing the same Atlanta team, what do the Fever have to do? I think you've got to implement more of that zone. I think you got to put pressure on their ball handlers. You got to make Ryan Howard uh, give up the ball. I think you got to take the ball out of her hand, make the other players make a secondary ball handler, make a play. Brittany Griner, I think you've got to strategically figure out how do you double her without allowing Brianna Jones to get free and to be able to hit shots because she can hit shots. This is such a nightmare matchup with a team that doesn't have size. It's just you saw the way that Natasha Howard tried to defend Brianna Jones at points in this game on Tuesday, and it just you could tell it was just too much. So I don't think you can do it for a very long, extended period of time. You got to have Bonner in there and throw a bigger body at her. But again, like I said, Jones is just such a difficult matchup for the Fever with Griner involved. Like that's a two-headed monster that's just gonna eat you alive in the paint. And the Fever again, they outscore the Dream in the paint, but it's the creation out of said paint that was the problem. I mean, you were allowing their players to get free on the arc and hit outside shots. So, um, I mean, Alicia Gray's a really good player. Um, Ryan Howard, Pow didn't hit her shots, but she's a pretty good shooter as well. Coffee, good player. It's a pretty good team that they've got there. Nas Hamilton, or sorry, Hillman. She played well. Like they got a good team in Atlanta. So a good test for the Fever early on. Two games against a team that I think is pretty good. Probably playoff. Like I give them a shot to make the playoffs this year and be a good team in the playoffs. Like they're going to cause problems just because adding Griner. I mean, that's such a great addition for this team. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think the Fever do going forward? What are some takeaways that you had? Again, got to rebound better, win the possession battle, offense less stagnant. I mean, quarter one and quarter three were just not great offensively. And then the rotations need to be better when Griner does sit in the paint and causes the double team, or Brianna Jones does. You got to find those rotations better. You can't allow Howard to get free and hit those shots. I mean, that was devastating, that 9-0 run that she went on by herself. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What did the Pacers, there we go. It took me all the way till the last minute of the show to say the Pacers instead of the Fever. That's what happens when you're talking about both teams in the span of 8 days. But yeah, Fever game on Thursday. Great test on the road, traveling for the first time this season. Can they beat an Atlanta team that I think is a very good team, and I think a good test? Make sure to subscribe, follow, like, comment over on YouTube. You can drop comments and people will hopefully interact with you as well. And I can, if you comment on the video, love to go back and forth, have that discussion, that conversation with anybody that's watching. What do you think about the season so far? What do the Fever need to improve? What are some things that they're doing well? You can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those are the main two. And then anywhere else you get your podcast, you can find us. Like I said, on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show. We are on socials at the Pacers Fever Show. And that's going to do it for today. The Fever showed flashes at times in this one, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Thursday's rematch, perfect test. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pacers Fever Show.